If you're a fan of smooth jazz and Red Bull, this is going to be a fight that fires you up. We have primetime Uriah Hall. He's going to be taking on Sean Strickland. Matt, why do I say that? It's because Sean Strickland lives life in the fast lane. And I'm not making light or making a joke about the accident that he had that forced him away from the cage for a very long time. But you look at the way that Sean Strickland fights, and it's like Brett Laurie playing for the BJs back in 2013. This guy is all speed, and he's got zero breaks, and he is absolutely going for it. For Sean Strickland, it's the pace, it's the pressure, it's the striking. We saw it in the rematch against John Phillips, and I know that, Jack Marshman, and I know that's a name that, listen, do I get my Welsh fighters in some of the higher weight classes mixed up? Sometimes. But in that fight, he's yelling at Marshman to kind of engage with him in the third round. He's having a lot of fun. He knocks out Brennan Allen, and then he goes into a fight against Krzysztof Jotko, and it's just pressure, 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 pressure. And what did you say getting ready for that fight? Well, the boxing of Sean Strickland and the pace is really hard to figure out, but Krzysztof Jotko is a pretty good kickboxer, and he's good off his back foot. Maybe Jotko has a great chance. He did not, and Sean Strickland continued to dominate, and Sean Strickland's one of those fighters that I don't know what you expected out of him at 170 pounds, but his only losses have aged like the finest of wines. Santiago Ponzinibbio, Kamaru Usman, and Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos. And Eliseu was on a run at that point. So obviously the weight cut was a huge difference maker. He beats Nordin Taleb in Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. And then, of course, he has that terrible motorcycle accident. He's totally got to redo everything. And now he's out of Syndicate MMA training with some great fighters. But he's going to be taking on, I say, smooth jazz. Because Uriah Hall just goes out there, and it is so much fun to watch this guy perform. Obviously, his last two fights, he's looked amazing. He beats Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman, legends. But before that, on this 4-fight win streak, he beats Antonio Carlos Jr. He knocks out Bevon Lewis at the end of the fight. That was just such a classic throwback win for Uriah Hall. One of the best counter strikers in the game. You know I absolutely love this fight, so I really want to get your thoughts on it.
This fight's going to be phenomenal. I really do think it will be, because Uriah Hall kind of thrives on being the guy getting backed up. We've seen it in his fights before. Now, he has varying levels of success when he is getting backed up, but at least as of late, he's developed into a really good, like, I'm going to plant and throw once I decide to. Because if you look at the Bevon Lewis fight, like, Lewis is moving forward, putting combinations together. And trust me, no one's been more critical of the UFC career of Bevon Lewis than your boy over here, but Uriah Hall flatlined him the second he decided to pull the trigger. And you could kind of tell, like, he's just not doing anything, not doing anything, not doing anything. And this second he decides to go, he flatlines him in one shot. The Antonio Carlos Jr. fight was not a split decision. He easily won 2 of those 3 rounds, and he was doing real damage to Carlos Jr. on the feet, too. There's this beautiful knockdown where he basically, like, steps through Carlos Jr. and hits him with a straight shot, puts him down, hurts him bad. I thought Uriah Hall easily won that fight. This Anderson Silva fight was weird, and I'm going to get into that fight a little bit more here in a second. But this fight, oddly enough, reminds me of Aljamain Sterling versus Petr Yan. And I know that's weird, but hear me out. Sean Strickland is kind of like Aljamain Sterling, not in their grappling, but in their stand-up, where I throw a lot. There's not a lot of just times in my fight where I'm paused and I'm just stationary, not doing anything. I'm either getting reads on my opponent, I'm throwing feints, or I'm throwing in volume, trying to land a combination. Very similar to Aljamain Sterling. Petr Yan, and the reason I like Petr Yan in that first fight against Aljo was that Petr Yan is a very intelligent fighter who, the more you throw at him, oddly enough, kind of helps him, you know? Like, the more reads you're giving him and the more I'm throwing at you, okay, you're giving him more information to work with as the fight goes on. And the more reads you're giving him early on is going to help him more and more and more. Uriah Hall is very similar to where he won't always have to be offensive for him to sort of be winning the fight. The more data you give him and the more data that he can download in the fight is actually going to help him speed up the process. Kind of like in the Anderson Silva fight. Anderson Silva, he's throwing a lot of feints, and even though he is old, he's still a very crafty striker and a very veteran savvy one at that. So against Uriah Hall, it took a little bit of time for Uriah Hall to really find the opening and hurt Silva in their fight. But then you can go back and even look at like the Krzysztof Jotko fight to parallel that one with the one that Strickland had. Jotko has Hall kind of hurt almost up against the cage in the first round, but the more Jotko throws at him helps Uriah Hall get those reads off him, and then he eventually flatlines him with an overhand. When Uriah Hall decides to pull the trigger, there are few fighters in the UFC more dangerous than he is. And I feel comfortable saying that across multiple weight classes. Like, in the how scared would I be if I was locked in the cage with this person, Uriah Hall's at like the top of the list, because you know at any moment he can put you on like the MMA equivalent of Dwayne Wade over Anderson Varejao type of a poster. Like he has that type of a highlight reel ability. And with Sean Strickland, it really does come down to, can the volume of Sean Strickland eventually break the rhythm and the timing of Uriah Hall? Because with Uriah Hall, everything comes down to confidence. If you can break his confidence in a fight like Paulo Costa did, Paulo Costa ate Uriah Hall's best shots and just kept on walking forward. There's a reason that I like Paulo Costa and his volume so much now, is because I saw him eat Uriah Hall's power shots, still able to walk through those and meet him with more power. He was able to kind of break the spirit almost of Uriah Hall, where it's like, okay, you ate my best shots, you're still coming forward. What else are you going to do? Against Sean Strickland, I think it's going to be a lot of the same forward pressure from Sean Strickland. I just don't think Strickland has that crippling power that Costa has, to where when Costa's landing, every shot I land on you is going to accumulate. With Strickland, there is a lot of pitter-patter followed by the power shots at the end of his combinations. And I worry that Sean Strickland's going to really have to take a lot of time for those power shots to accumulate. And by the time that those power shots do start to accumulate, that's when Uriah Hall is going to get his reads on Sean Strickland. I know that was a really long-winded explanation, but I hope that was a decent way of breaking this fight down.
Should Sean Strickland open up with 2 back-to-back leg kicks to start it off?
No, because this is the problem. If you kick with a guy like Uriah Hall, you're helping him stay at his own range. Like, that's the weird thing about Uriah Hall. He's going to be so far away from Sean Strickland to begin with that Strickland really is going to have to throw his first 3 punches in this combination to try to land number 4 and number 5, because Uriah Hall will be moving backwards a lot. And we've seen Hall struggle with power punchers. We don't really see him struggle with volume punchers. And I really do put Strickland in. Listen, he has great power, but a lot of the times, even the Brendan Allen fight, he's not going out there hitting him with one shot. It's 5, 6, 7 clean shots, and then those 7 clean shots turn into 12, which turn into 15, which turn into 20. It's just, when you're throwing with that crazy amount of volume, you're leaving windows and you're leaving holes for a guy like Uriah Hall to capitalize on. And I do think Uriah Hall has enough power to put down Strickland at 185 pounds.
Significant strikes absorbed per minute for both of these guys. 3.54 for Hall, 3.64 for Strickland. Matt, landed per minute, 5.14 for Strickland, 3.34 for Hall. All of their numbers are above the UFC averages. And in terms of defense, a little bit better for Sean Strickland, 67% to 53% for Hall. But the accuracy, 51% for Hall, 39% for Sean Strickland. Listen, Strickland normally goes for a takedown a little bit more than Uriah Hall, but both guys below average. They're both strikers. And for Uriah Hall, Matt, what would you say his best counter-striking performance was? Was it the Pavon Lewis, or was it the fight against Gegard Mousasi that he won?
I mean, the Gegard Mousasi one is one of the greatest highlights of all time. A jumping, spinning back kick into a flying knee. If you're just going off a counter-striking performance, though, you could bring up the Anderson Silva fight, just because against Silva and against a guy who is so high level in that aspect, it was really nice. But I always like to think of it was the Krzysztof Jotko fight, because he does get hurt early on in that fight, and then he is able to get over that adversity and hurt Jotko. And for the longest time, that was kind of the story about Uriah Hall. It's make him face adversity, and he won't get through the other side of it. At least the Jotko fight was the first fight where he started to show, okay, I can absorb some damage and then still get through it.
So when you look at this fight, again, Strickland's been on this run. We've seen kind of what he does. He just walks guys down. He almost stands a little bit square. He walks you down. He outboxes you. He might taunt you. You know exactly what's going to happen, but these guys haven't been able to figure it out. And I think even that Brendan Allen win, now it's recency bias because it was last weekend, but it ages really well because Brendan Allen was able to outstrike Punahele Soriano. Whoever thought that was going to happen.
Different Brendan Allen.
Well, but it wasn't even that long ago. That's a crazy thing. So when I look at this one for Strickland, since he's come back, 2 wins in 2020, a win over Krzysztof Jotko back in May. And he's coming into this one a pretty decent favorite. He opened a minus 180. He's a minus 217 right now for Uriah Hall. Open a plus 155. He's a plus 175 right now. Tapology votes. Surprised us there to you. 1,051 total votes, 59% Strickland, 55% of the voters having to win by decision, 39% have to win by knockout. For the 41% that have Hall, 21% by decision, 71% by knockout. And if you look at it for Sean Strickland, he spent some of this camp not just at Syndicate, but at Extreme Couture with Eric Nixick, as well as 10th Planet VJJ. Casey Halstead's getting all the top fighters training at 10th Planet now, just before they get to go to the dance. So credit where credit's due. I try and pump his tires every time I can. So here's the opportunity. But when I look at this fight, Sean Strickland, again, pure boxer, a little bit in terms of height, a little bit less in terms of reach. I have a hard time It's going to be Uriah Hall's birthday too. He turns 37 on fight day, so kudos to him. What's the final pick here?
I think the counter-striking of Uriah Hall will win out eventually. And I understand it might look ugly until it doesn't. And there might be some mean people online throughout the first 2 rounds saying, hey, Uriah Hall looks like shit right now. But in classic Uriah Hall fashion, he is kind of like that middleweight version of Derek Lewis. I understand what Uriah Hall does is a lot flashier, but it is very much that it's going to look bad until it doesn't. But when he does land that counter shot, it is devastating. And Sean Strickland, there's not a lot of give to him. He's not a guy who can eat a shot and really rolls with it well. And I do feel like if Uriah Hall can catch him with that one big counter, he's going to put him down. The guys who Strickland's been in there with as of late, none of them have been even near the level of striking of Uriah Hall. Whereas Uriah Hall has fought many guys who can strike as well as Sean Strickland, if not better. Like, Sean Strickland's a good striker, but even you wouldn't tell me Sean Strickland's a better striker than Paulo Costa. He's not better than Derek Brunson, I don't think, or at least he doesn't have the power of Derek Brunson. That's fair to say.
Olawale Bamboje.
Oluwale Bamboje got flatlined by Uriah Hall with some brutal ground and pound. So, hey, it happens. But Uriah Hall's been in there with the Thiago Santoses of the world. Like, he knows how to be in there with other high-level strikers. And when Uriah Hall loses, it's because it's a guy who has more power than him, who can catch him, or it's a guy who has really good wrestling. Sean Strickland doesn't really possess either one of those things. I think this will be a very good fight. And honestly, I think this is going to be fight of the night. But my final pick is Uriah Hall.
I'm oddly in agreement. I like the underdog in this fight. Again, I think in terms of the reads, if you back Uriah Hall up, it's going to be really tough for Sean Strickland to get the win that way. I mean, listen, we've seen him go a hard 3 rounds and just continue to go. Again, that Jack Marshman fight, I didn't think Sean Strickland was going to have that kind of cardio coming back off the injury that he had.
Jack Marshman, though.
The guy's missing the majority of one knee. And he comes back in there and he looks amazing. So, I mean, I love the cardio from Sean Strickland, but the staying power of Uriah Hall, we've seen him in 5-round fights. He had the 5-rounder against Anderson Silva. Say what you will. He beat Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I mean, he's going to be fighting one of the Paul brothers in boxing. It's Logan. It's not Jake. And it's like getting a striped bass. I mean, it's cool. It's cool. It's not a pike, but it's cool. But overall, yeah, I like Uriah Hall in this fight as well. We're both going with the underdog out of Jamaica in Uriah Hall to get the win. Fortis MMA's own, Matt. We got a great card coming up this weekend. It's interesting. Fights have dropped out. Fights have been added. We're away from home. So make sure you keep it locked in with Fight Night picks as we continue to update this card. But overall, big time middleweight contest here. You let us know who you've got down below in the comments section. Keep it locked in with Fight Night picks. And as we always say,
let's get into it.